Thank you to the Rav who came from Eretz Yisrael to be with us for the last few days. Baruch Hashem, we had many events, many programs. For those of you who don't know the Rav is a senior lecturer at Or Sameach, and also he's a Mashgiach Ruchani at Yeshivat Beit Yisrael. He's very close to many of our guys here in the community, and Baruch Hashem, we're getting to know him better. He's come to our community already last 3-4 times last few years. Without further ado, I'd like to ask the Rav to come and
just tell them the boys to bring some water.
Why?
I was going to suggest maybe we should go into the other room over there, and it'll look full. You know, if we go into that. It's good. It's good. First of all, I just want to again take an opportunity. I just want to thank my hosts, Reb Shmuel and Reb Chaim Sadyan, and the very community which have been so very warm and welcoming. And special thanks to Mr. and Mrs. Daniel Kohen Gadol for their hospitality. They go on what they call in Hebrew me'al u'me'ever, be above and beyond the call of duty. And I want to speak tonight a little bit about our preparations for Pesach and see what we're trying to get out of this, what the message of Pesach is for us. There was an incident. A guy decided he wants to make a parnasa, so he decided he's going to rob a bank. Robbing a bank is a good parnasa, and the trick in life is to make money without working too hard. He decided to rob a bank. Rob a bank is not so easy. So he puts on decides the best way to rob the bank, he's got to get past the security guard. I was just went through the security guard. Now I gave a very thorough search, and by flashing his flashlight right into my jacket, that was it. And so this guy decides he's got to get through the security guard at the bank. So he decides he puts on a police uniform. He walks into the bank and he's wearing a police uniform. And so the security guard sees a policeman come in. He doesn't say anything. The guy walks right past him, and he goes up to the teller and he pulls out a gun and he says, "Okay, fill up the bag." So the teller quickly fills up the bag. She sees the gun, she fills up the bag. And while she's filling up the bag, the guy behind him, there's a guy wearing a t-shirt and blue jeans, and he sticks a gun into this guy's ribs. He says, "Hi, you're under arrest. I'm an undercover cop." And so now you got the guy in the police uniform who's a robber who's being arrested by the guy who looks like a robber. He's really an undercover cop. And the undercover cop doesn't want him to get away, so he pulls out a handcuff and he handcuffs himself to the robber so he shouldn't get away. And now he's going to walk him down to the police station. So they're walking down the block to the police station. And the undercover cop has a friend, a neighbor, who knows that he's involved in something secretive. He doesn't know exactly what he's involved in. And all of a sudden he sees him. There he is. He's handcuffed. He sees his neighbor, Bill, in his blue jeans being handcuffed to a cop. So as Bill sees his neighbor come over, he says, "Hey, listen, Tom, this isn't what you think it is. I know it looks bad, but he said, I'm really an undercover cop, and this guy's a robber. I've just arrested him." And so the robber, the real robber who knows he's about to go to jail, isn't going to make life easy for this guy. So he turns to the neighbor and says, "You don't really believe him, do you? I mean, I'm the one with the uniform. Look at what this guy looks like. I'm the cop. He's the robber." He says, No, Tom, I'm telling you, I'm the cop. He's saying the policeman says, "Come on, who are you going to believe over here?" So the neighbor's confused. He says, "Who am I supposed to believe?" So finally the undercover cop says, "Look, there's only one way to prove it. There's only one way to prove who's the cop, who's the robber. The guy who's got the keys to the handcuffs, he's the cop." He reaches in the pocket, pulls out the keys. He says, "I got the keys, I'm the cop." So there's a very important Musar lesson. Rabbi Yankel Galinsky says that every one of us has the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is handcuffed to us. We go through our life, he's handcuffed to us. The question is that we have no choice. He's with us from the day we're born. And the question becomes, who's in control? Who's the one pulling whom? Are you pulling him or he's pulling you? So the real task for a Jew, thank you very much, the task for a Jew and real challenge in our life is, how do we take control? How do we get control? How is it that we overcome and we get control over this pest, this persistent pest who accompanied us our whole life? There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, everybody knows the Mishnah, says, "Akina ve'ataiva ve'akavod batzina sada mina olam." Envy the pursuit of honor, and envy, desire, and the pursuit of honor remove a person from the world. What that means is, at literal level, it means it removes us from the world to come, because every time we succumb to an Aveira, a person could actually lose his portion in the world to come, depending on what degree he succumbs to the Aveira, number one. Number two, every single Aveira that a person ever does, any sin that a person ever does, is going to have at least one of these factors involved in it. If not one, sometimes two or three. But there's at least one of these factors that underlying every single Aveira that we ever do, there's at least one factor underlying it. Is it warm in here, by the way? Is there air conditioning in this city? If there are no people, at least air conditioning, you know. I shouldn't say that, we are the people. So, are they activating it? You know, I'm from Israel, you take nothing for granted. You know, in Israel, if you ask a guy, is there air conditioning? He says, yeah. Oh, could you turn it on, please? You can't, you gotta make it really, really clear. So every Aveira, Akina ve'ataiva ve'akovod, every Aveira has one of these things underlying it. Now stop and think about it. Motzinas adam min ha'olam doesn't only mean the world of truth. That's spiritual. Literally, every one of these things literally removes a person from this world. Akina, person who's jealous. So first of all, jealousy has a physiological effect on us. A person eats their kishkis out when they're jealous. There's a pasuk that says, Rekav atzmos kina. The rotting of the bones is that when you're jealous of somebody, you can actually feel it having a physiological effect on you. You feel like you get a stomach ache from it. It really bothers you in your kishkas. When you're jealous of somebody, it causes a person's health to erode, number one. Number two, as a result of jealousy, a person often gets involved in, he overworks in order to keep up with the next guy. They bought a big house, I'll buy a bigger one because I want to keep up with them. I'm envious of them, buy a bigger car, a vacation, whatever it is that a person has. So the jealousy actually causes, then the man, a couple could be overworking for what? Only to keep up with somebody else because they're jealous of somebody else. And the overwork then runs down their health and so on and so forth. So on a very literal level, kina could cut short a person's life. Taiva is the same thing when it comes to physical desire. Obviously, food, food, health, immorality, smoking, drugs, whatever else there is out there. I knew a guy who once went to a concert at Chicago Stadium, went to a rock concert at Chicago Stadium, and the guy was looking to the guy. There was somebody outside selling loose joints. And this guy walked over, he bought, he was looking to smoke up before the concert, and it turned out that what he smoked was not, it was not the real thing, it was oregano, and which isn't so bad, so you lost your money, except this guy was severely allergic to oregano. So he had a bad allergic reaction, had to be hospitalized. I always wondered, how did he tell his parents exactly what happened? The guy was in high school. I remember he got, Mom, Dad, I'm kind of in the hospital. I had an allergic reaction to oregano. Yeah, what were you doing with oregano? What, you had another slice of pizza? Well, it wasn't quite like that, exactly how in a guy, for allergic reaction, a person could die. A person could in Israel, unfortunately, we had a tragedy in Eretz Yisrael where a kid who was severely allergic to any kind of dairy products. He actually took a bite out of a cheese burekas. He had a bad allergic reaction. They did not know what was wrong with him. The kid passed out. He was hospitalized, and he was in a coma for about a month, and he was nifter. So, these are things that can literally terminate a person, could drug overdose, and so on and so forth. And the third one is, obviously, kavod, the pursuit of honor, could terminate a person's life. First of all, stop and think about it. I once made a calculation. Over 50% of the presidents, a guy wants to be president of the United States. Now, once to be president, he's spending millions of dollars for a $200,000 a year job. So it's obviously not the salary. So a guy wants to become a president because he obviously wants the honor. Stop and think about it. I once made a calculation. Since 1960, over 50% of the presidents since 1960 have been shot at. Could be more, should have been, but over 50% since 1960 have been shot at, right? Now, there's no other profession. You wouldn't say, well, 50% of accountants have been shot at, right? It doesn't work that way. Once in a while, it depends. It's America, after all, it's minagamokom. But it's not, once in a while somebody gets shot at. The guy in Atlanta went in, he shot the place up. Once in a while, you get upset with your doctor, but he gave you a shot, you shoot him, But at the end of the day, not 50%. A guy's willing to be president of the United States. The fact that you need so much security probably tells you that this isn't a really good job. Most people who are working a regular job, don't have these kind of security issues. This just came off. I don't know where this came from. It's like when you take apart the lamp at home and you put it back together and you're left with one screw. And I guess we didn't need it. You just toss the screw and then you plug in the lamp, the whole house blows out or something. So I don't know exactly what this is from. We'll put it over here. So the idea now, and what's really remarkable, everybody knows the Beis Hamikdash, the first Beis Hamikdash stood 410 years. The second Beis Hamikdash stood 420 years. Now stay with this. This is remarkable. In the first Beis Hamikdash, there were 18 Kohen Gadol's in the time of the first Beis Hamikdash. 18 Kohen Gadol's, 410 years. I think it comes out to about 22 and a half years per Kohen Gadol. The second Beis Hamikdash was 420 years. There were over 300 Kohen Gadol's. Now, if you deduct 80 years for Yochanan Kohen Gadol, and 40 years for Shimon HaTzadik, so scoop off for those two, 120 years. So it leaves you about 300 Kohanim for 300 years. Now do the math. Right? Remember, there used to be a vitamin called one a day. Right? Now this is one a year. There was a president, the Kohen Gadol, the Kohen is one Kohen per year. So the Kohen would go in, and contrary to popular belief, because they were buying the position from the Greeks, they were bribing them to get the position. There's a lot of kavod to wear the choshen and go into and contrary to popular belief, they did not die in the Holy of Holies. They did not die in the Holy of Holies. Once in a while, there's a Kohen that says the Kohen Gadol would go in, they would tie a rope to him, so that if they heard a thud from the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, they heard a thud from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, they would haul him out. Then they put the rope on the second guy. I always wondered how he felt. How does the second guy feel? Okay, you're in now. I don't feel so well today. And you're going in. But they didn't die in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Most of them died in the course of the year. In the course of the year, if they were not worthy of going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, they died. Now, I understand the first Kohen who bought the position, he died within the year. It could happen, the guy had a heart attack. The second Kohen went in and he died. It happens once in a while. And what was Kohen number 47 thinking when the 46 ahead of him, each one died the year they were in the Beis Hamikdash? And each guy obviously went and said, "That's not going to happen to me." But it did happen to them, up to 300 Kohanim, one a year. Stop and think about it. It's remarkable. Why did it happen? Because they're in the pursuit of honor. And the pursuit of honor literally took them out of this world. So that's Kina Taiva Kavod, Motzi'in Es Ha'odam Mina Olam. The other pursuit of honor is obviously the pursuit of money. Money is not what Jews. I had a guy in yeshiva once told me. I asked him, what's your financial situation? If a kid wanted to stay in learning, and a question of the parent have money, he says, listen, I'm sure they got a savings account somewhere. Jews always got another savings account, which is true. Jews save money. What is the money for? Money is more than what the money buying is. The status of the money, the kavod that the money could give you. And we are very much status-oriented with the money. We, you, us, them, whoever has it. But whoever's got the money often is the underlying cause, in reverse, the underlying cause of the accumulation of money is because of the pursuit of the kavod, the status that comes with it. So I don't remember which group I told the story to. I think it was at the Beis Yaakov. I don't know if any of the girls from the Beis Yaakov are here. If you are, you probably heard the story. Any of you from the Beis Yaakov? Didn't think so. They are. Okay, so I told this at the Beis Yaakov. There was a father who had 3 sons. Just to show you how kavod, what the power of money is. The father had 3 sons, and where did I tell this? At the Blah Malka, okay. So so whoever was at the Blah Malka, don't listen now. Actually somebody once said a story you can listen to twice, because a story is not like a piece of information. A story is something you have to live. So even at my own house on Shabbos, I'll tell over a story. One of the kids will say to me, "Daddy, you told us that story already." One of the other kids will say, "Chacham shomea pa'amayim." A wise man listens twice. Then I'll say, "But Dad, you did tell us that story." So just to make sure that I know. So there was a man had 3 sons. On the day his first son turned 18, a letter arrived in the mail from a lawyer. An anonymous donor has sent $1 million to become your son's on the day he turns 18. So everybody celebrates, wow, $1 million for an 18-year-old. Of course, he goes out and buys himself a sports car. And he's driving around in a sports car for 3 weeks, and at a certain point, he's speeding down a side street 90 miles an hour, hits a tree, and he dies instantly. 2 years later, the second son turns 18. The day he turns 18, a letter arrives for the lawyer. An anonymous donor sent $1 million. This time the family's more cautious. They put most of the money away. But the kid's got more money than is good for him, falls in with the wrong friends, gets involved in drugs, and he has to go to rehab. His life is ruined. 2 years later, the third son turns 18. The day he turns 18, letter from the lawyer, an anonymous donor, $1 million. It's time father picks up the phone. He calls up the lawyer. He says, sorry, we're not interested in the money. The lawyer says, well, your son is legally the age where he can accept it. You cannot decline the money for him. He'd have to decline it himself. So the father goes ballistic. He says, can you please tell me who keeps sending the money? So the lawyer says, yeah. Do you remember about 20 years ago you were in business, you had a partner, and the two of you had a very nasty split. And your partner vowed that one day he's going to get revenge. He made a lot of money and decided the best way you get revenge is to send $1 million to each of your sons on their 18th birthday. Looks like he was right. So a person sometimes wonder, the money, how bad could money be? It could take a person out of the world very easily. The pursuit of the kavod, the money, could take a person out of the world. There's another story, terrible story, you love it. There was a chasna, and the father of the kala, at the chasna, the father of the kala had $10,000 cash in a little envelope in his pocket, because he's got to pay the band and for all the stuff at the chasna. So right after the chuppah, he noticed that he was missing the envelope. And he didn't, he couldn't find the envelope, the whole night. So he couldn't even enjoy the chasna, because the whole time, where did I put it? What did I do with that envelope? Okay, he couldn't find the envelope, it was lost. During the week of Sheva Brachos, the families got together to watch a video. They got together after one of the Sheva Brachos to watch a video of the chasna. And all of a sudden they have the chuppah, and he notices at the chuppah a hand sticks out, and where he can't say it, and there's a hand that pulls the envelope out of his pocket. And then the camera zooms up, and it turns out that it was a hand belonging to his mechutin, the father of the chassan. Right, so everybody's in the room looking at the father of the chassan. I can imagine. I'm sure now that's awkward. And the father of the chassan exactly. So I'm sure he was something like, "Well, I was only joking." Funny, clever, witty. That's the desire for the money. Another man is embarrassed. The man's ruined. Takes him out of the world. That's the koach of the money. The lure of the money. A person who is living with these things controlling himself is obviously living a life out of control. When you're not in control, you are being controlled. You are the robber, you are the cop who's being pulled by the robber. Person is living a life out of control. You're the policeman who is being controlled by the robber. You are the human being being controlled by the Yetzer Hara. There's actually an incident in New York. In New York, there's a zoo. There's a big giant zoo in New York. I'm not talking about Brooklyn, no. There's a big giant zoo in New York that has, the zoo has a train. There's a massive zoo, I think it's the Bronx Zoo, I'm not sure what it is. There's a train that runs on a track, it goes all the way to the top. It goes around the top of the zoo, so you can look down into the cages. This is a documented incident, took place a couple of years ago. There's the train goes around the track, and you can look down into the cages. At a certain point, the train was going around. There are these 16-foot high walls, and you look down over these 16-foot high walls. The train was going around on the track, and at a certain point, a 27-year-old gentleman stood up in this train, and he jumped over the restraining wall into the tiger cage. And I read the newspaper, I saw the newspaper report, it took 3 paragraphs of print. He was in the cage for 10 minutes until the zoo people could come. They sprayed off the tiger with fire repellent, whatever it was, and they got the guy out. Miraculously he lived. And it took 3 pages of print to describe the injuries that the tiger apparently was insulted, that his space was invaded, and this tiger did for 10 minutes. I just remember the words puncture, fracture, broken, dislocated. Those were all the adjectives in the 3 paragraphs of describing this guy. So when he finally regained consciousness in the hospital, one of the policemen said to him, what were you thinking? First of all, to jump over a 16-foot wall, and number 2, to jump into a tiger cage, which you would agree with me is not all that tempting. And the guy jumped into the cage. He said, what were you thinking? The guy, his very rational response was, I wanted to experience the essence of tiger. Now, I cannot explain to you what that means because I've never done it. And you read the article. It's not high on my list of activities which I'm planning. Some are that and cleaning for Pesach are around the same. And at the end of the day, you would agree with me that it's not that tempting. Yet there's a restraining wall over there to stop people from doing just that. So sometimes we wonder, why did the rabbis, the Rabbanan came along and they made Gzeras, the Rabbanan, to restrain us? Do I really need to be restrained? Do you really need to be restrained? The answer is yeah, we're capable of an awful lot. And if we're guided by Kina, Taiva, and Kovid, so then we are capable of jumping over and breaking through all sorts of barriers. And therefore, the Rabbanan have erected barriers because they know that as a human being, which is part of our condition, as a human being, we are capable of this sort of behavior. And therefore, they create those fences for us. The opposite, and it's a remarkable parallel, in the same Pirkei Avos it says, Al Shlosha Dvarim Ha'olam Omed, the world stands on three things. The world stands on Torah, Avoda, and Gemilus Chasadim. Now watch the parallels. The parallels are remarkable. Torah, every human being has three relationships. There's a relationship between man and God, there's a relationship between man and his fellow man, a relationship between man and himself. Torah is a relationship between man and himself. And by the way, when we talk about Torah for men, the parallel to Torah for women is tznius. That's the parallel. Women do not have the obligation to learn Torah. Their mitzvah, the Vilna Gaon says, the mitzvah for a woman, which she gets out of her mitzvah, what a man gets out of studying Torah, the mitzvah for a woman is tznius. So Torah is the control of a man's desire. That Torah is the parallel to taiva. Taiva is desire, unbridled, uncontrolled desire, and the only way to control that desire is by studying Torah so that it burns out the evil inclination, number one. Number two, I heard about a man, by the way, people always talk about Torah learning and dedication. I'll just tell you two stories that just to show you the dedication of Torah. There was a man who actually made a siyum. And on a Masechta, or Mishnayos, whatever it was, he made a siyum on. And when did he learn it? He learned it every time his car stopped and there was a red light. Every time he was stuck at a red light, instead of sitting there and thinking things about other drivers around him, at the red light, he would pull out a sefer. Can you imagine such a thing? That was his devotion. And eventually made a siyum. Right? Now, obviously, we want him to put the sefer away before he resumes driving. You want the sefer away. But you understand, if a person values Torah, and you value every word of Torah is a mitzvah. So the dedication to Torah, there's no end to the dedication. I think many of you have heard of Rabbi Shmuel Birnbaum. Shmuel Birnbaum was Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir Yeshiva, who was known for his unending devotion to Torah learning. And Rabbi Shmuel Birnbaum learned day and night, every minute, every spare minute he was learning Torah. So one of his disciples from the Mir Yeshiva graduated, he was ready, he was a businessman, was on a plane, he was sitting up in business. And for some reason he had to go back into the coach section. When he walked back into the coach section, he saw Shmuel Birnbaum was sitting there in a seat learning. The guy felt bad, this is his former Rosh Yeshiva. So he came over to Shmuel Birnbaum, he said, Rosh Yeshiva, I have a seat in business, you go sit in business and I'll sit over here. So Shmuel looked up at him and he said, I don't need a seat in business. I need a chavrusa. Tell the guy next to me to go in business. You sit down, let's learn. It wasn't the upgrade he expected, was it? Sit down and learn. So, sometimes, his expression, the Gemara says, Lo b'shamayim hi. It is not in heaven. Some people think when you're on a plane, then you're exempt from Torah. Lo b'shamayim hi. Torah isn't up there. That's not what it means, by the way. Lo b'shamayim hi had a completely different meaning. So a person understands that Torah learning, there's no end to the devotion of Torah learning. That's the only way to neutralize taiva. Avoda means, number one, primarily tefillah, prayer. And besides prayer, avoda refers to any mitzvahs that we do. Any sort of mitzvahs that we do, that falls into the category of avoda. We are serving God. That's obviously the opposite of the pursuit of kavod. Because kavod means it's all about me. Avoda means I am setting myself aside and devoting myself to God. And therefore the opposite of kavod is avoda, service of God. When we submit to God, pull out a siddur and we daven, And obviously, the way men daven and the way women daven, women are natural daveners, by the way. Women, you should know, you're natural daveners. Because women, you can see even when little girls take a sitter and they daven, they just sit there and davening like that. Men need a minyan. Because when a man davens at home alone, you know what man's davening at home. He's got his pajamas on, and he's got one eye in the sitter and one eye in the newspaper as he's davening, one eye on his cell phone as he's davening. You watch, even from a young age, little girls daven with tears. I remember my daughter was davening. She was a little kid, I think she was about 6 years old. She first started davening. She said the whole page. She'd just say, Asher Zelo Biyontif, that means where we skip this, whatever is written in the sitter, no one ever read a skipping section with as much devotion as my daughter, and she said the whole thing. The little boys, you watch the little boys davening, the little boys, it's kind of like, it usually looks something like, the boy. Nobody's looking, he's done, and if there are two little boys together, then it's always, eventually, there's, boom, so it's a completely different approach. So with davening, women are much more natural daveners. Men, you need a minyan, because when you got a minyan, we're on our best behavior in shul. So in shul, I want everybody to see me davening, but that helps to bring out in us a certain level of devotion. So the devotion of tefillah, devotion of avodah, that devotion is, the famous story, beautiful story. Reb Eliezer Silver, after the war, Reb Eliezer Silver was one of the Rabbanim, went to Europe after World War II. He went around looking for Jews. He's the famous story when he went into one of the camps, and he used to go into church services, and he would quickly walk up with two American Marines right in the middle of a church service, and he would go up there and he would go, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And any kid who he saw instinctively doing like this, he knew that was a Jewish kid who had been kidnapped by the church. And eventually he negotiated, Rabbi Herzog, he did the same thing, and he negotiated with Pope Pius, who wasn't. He negotiated with him for the release of 4,000 Jewish children, Jewish war orphans. So Rabbi Silver was once in the camps after the war. The Jews were in these refugee camps in Europe, waiting to be placed, to find somewhere to go. And Rabbi Silver went up to this man, and he got a minyan together. He got a minyan of Jews together, we're going to daven. And he walked over, he saw a little old man, and he walked over and said, would you like to join us for davening? He said, no, I don't daven anymore. So he said to him, why not? He says, listen, Rabbi, I was in the camp. Do you know there was a man in our camp, in our concentration camp, there was one man who had a sitter. One man had a sitter. And anybody who wanted to daven, he wouldn't allow them to use the sitter unless they were willing to trade their day's rations for the sitter. If that's how a Jew could behave, I'm not davening. So Rabbi Silver said to him, my friend, instead of looking at the man who traded his sitter for the rations, why don't you look at all those Jews who were willing to trade their rations for a sitter? And the man got up with him and he went and he davened. So dedication to davening, we submit. Under all circumstances, a Jew submits. That's the opposite of kavod. There's another guy in Eretz Yisrael who had not missed a minyan since his bar mitzvah. Not shacharis mitzvah, mincha, or marv. He never missed a minyan. And he was already a middle age. Middle age, by the way, is any age we are. That's middle age. Middle age is whatever age. You get a guy 94. Well, I'm just in middle age right now. Because, what we call middle age nowadays, do the math. It doesn't really look like the middle, does it? Not based on statistics anyway. So he was middle age. He was about, in his 70s. Yeah, he was about, 40, 45. And that's young. Ooh, young. That's not even middle. That's not even this first quarter. And he was at a business meeting somewhere in Tel Aviv, and he had missed one minyan since his bar mitzvah. At his grandfather's funeral, he missed mincha. That was it. Since then, he never missed a minyan. And all of a sudden, he went to this meeting in Tel Aviv, and he was in an office building, and he realized it's getting late. It's running towards Shkia, and he hasn't davened mincha yet. And he wanted to get a minyan. So he went around the office, and he noticed there were another 6 guys. There were 5 guys. They had 6 people to daven mincha. He said, daven mincha, could we get a minyan together? But there were only 6 people. He called a cab company, and he said, send over 4 taxis, have them keep their meters running, tell them to come up and daven mincha with us. I'll pay them for the meters and everything, just so he could daven mincha with the minyan. So a person understands the devotion. That's the person who is fighting his own kavod. He's so devoted to submitting himself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's fighting against his own kavod. And obviously, the last one is chesed. Chesed is obviously the opposite of kina. Jealousy means resentment towards somebody else, what somebody else has. And what do you call it? Chesed means concern for other people. So Torah, avoda, and gemilus chasadim are the opposites of kina, taiva, and kavod. The only way to act to counter them is by getting involved in the opposite. There was a family that was going away for Pesach. It's very timely, by the way. A family was going away for Pesach, and they got to the airport. You know, they're going to some relatives or friends, whatever. They were going to a different country for Pesach, and they got the family in England, and they got to the airport. And when they got to the airport, it turned out that they had forgotten one of the kids' the passport expired. Now, there is very little aggravation in life as getting to the airport and finding out you can't get on the plane that you want to get onto. And this was Erev Pesach, where the whole family was going. The wife had not prepared anything for Pesach, no cooking, no clean, nothing. And they get to the airport, the husband runs over to go talk to somebody. Can we get something done? Is there a way to get on the plane? In the meantime, the wife is already crying. That's the first thing, start crying. And she calls, what else do you do? A woman's at the airport. She says she's stuck in already the first thought of what am I going to do? How are we going to cook? How are we going to, and nothing. It's Erev Pesach. It's the morning of Pesach. And she immediately calls her best friend Miriam just to pour out her heart. You know, Miriam, I was stuck at the airport and I don't know what to do. And she hangs up. She just had to have to tell somebody. Women are like that. They like to express themselves. I think you call it being validated, right? Isn't that the word? I need to be validated, right? I never needed to be validated. I'm here. You know, women need to be validated. It's something that I learned. You know. By the way, just derech hagav, I'll tell you the story first. But so the woman calls her friend. She says, "Yeah, this is terrible. We're stuck at the airport. I don't know what we're going to do with that." In the meantime, the husband's running around trying to get on. The guy says, "Sorry, there's no way you can get on the plane unless you leave your kid behind," which they were certainly tempted to do, but they weren't going to do. And so they said, "We can't leave the kid behind. We forgot to do that." Okay, they don't know what to do. About half hour later, her cell phone rings, and Miriam's on the phone. And she says to this lady who's still in tears, says to her, "Where is the key to your house? Which neighbor has the key to your house?" She goes, "Well, you know, my best friend Rena has the key to the house." "Why?" She says, "Because there are 6 yeshiva bachrim on your doorstep right now who are waiting to get into your house to clean it up. There's been an order made already from the meat store, and there's been and they're waiting to get into your house now, so we just need the key to get in so you can make Pesach at home." So a person understands chesed. A person understands what a chesed is. A woman, like, oh yeah, Erev Pesach brings out the best in women. And can you imagine what a chesed is? Sometimes people are looking for a chesed. So advice, make sure the passports are okay. Right? And number 2, make sure you have a friend named Miriam. And number 3, I just realized it's a great idea. Well, why should I clean up? I'll just tell my wife, let's go away. I'll hide her passport, go home, let these yeshiva guys go into the house. So that's just the male's take on this whole situation. I was just going to say that one of the differences between women and men that I've noticed over the years, and Rabbi Beryl Wine was once giving a talk, and somebody said to him, "What makes you say?" He was giving a talk to a women's group about women. And somebody said to him, "What makes you such an expert on women?" So he said, "Well, I come from a long line of women." So one of the differences that I noticed, this validating business, this whole validating business, which it took me a while to understand that. Watch how men and women communicate. Watch how women and women communicate. It's a remarkable thing. This is why men struggle in marriage. Because when women talk, have you ever noticed how women talk? They kind of lock eyes on each other. Their faces are about 2 inches away from each other. They're both talking simultaneously. They even keep their eyes in sync with each other like that. And you hear all sorts of expressions like, "Oh, I know what you mean. Oh, 100%. Oh, that's right." A lot of this validation thing. Watch men talk. They sit back to back. And they sit back to back, and the conversation is basically, "You're crazy. You're out of your mind. You don't know what you're talking about. That's your best friend." And so now you understand why there's a little bit of an issue in marriage. When you get married, and "Oh, I'm supposed to make eye contact." And I told you, the guy says to his wife says to him, "Harold, you're not listening." He says, "Edna, I hear every word you're saying." "You're not listening with your eyes." That's what eyes are for. Eyes are meant to be used for listening. So that's just the little communication gap over there. Was a commercial. So by the way, I called my wife up this week. I said to her, I'm kind of homesick. She said to me, you don't want to be home right now, right? It is Erev Pesach, the house is upset. You really do not, you are much better off where you are, which is true. So, and we both know it. So now I want to tell you something. If you've ever been to the Mir Yeshiva in Israel, there's a beautiful site every morning, the Mir Yeshiva, busloads of Kollel guys are brought in, hundreds of them. 100 buses from every Rav Nosson Tzvi Zatzal arranged buses from all the neighborhoods in Yerushalayim to bring Kollel guys to Mir Yeshiva. And there are literally dozens of buses, hundreds and hundreds of Avrechim coming to Mir, leaving at 1 o'clock, coming back at 3 o'clock. It's a beautiful site. There was a bus full of Avrechim, and apparently the bus driver did something wrong. He went over a line, and an Israeli cop stopped him. He waved him over to the side, and he gave him a ticket. The ticket was about, I think it was 250 shekels. The bus driver gets back on the bus, and he's livid. He said, this guy gave me a ticket, it's a nitpick, and it was just a little bit over the line. I wasn't over even on the what it calls a nitpick. The guy had a fight with his wife before he left the house, and he's got to take it out on me. And it's going on and on and on. In the meantime, one of the Avrechim got up, and he started going around the bus, asking each Avrech for 5 shekels. There are about 50 Avrechim on the bus. He asked each Avrech for 5 shekels, and he walks over to the bus driver, and he presents him with 250 shekels and says, here, pay your ticket. Do you ever see an Israeli bus driver speechless? Mm-hmm. You see an Israeli bus driver close to tears, right? Can you imagine such a thing? Person who's looking to do chesed, there's always an opportunity to do chesed. Those are the 3 things, those are the 3 parallels. Torah, Avodah, Gemilas, Chasadim, and those are the parallels, Kinyan, Yachad Kollel. What's it got to do with Pesach? So, a person who's looking to do mitzvahs, somebody came to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, little boy came to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach Zatzal, and he said to Rav Shlomo, I have a question, and it was a valid question. There's a Mishnah that says, we say it every day, probably the most famous Mishnah of all, say it every time that somebody learns, somebody gives a drasha. Rabbi Chananya ben Akasha Omer, Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu lezakos es Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give merit to the Jewish people, lefichach hirba lehem Torah mitzvahs, therefore he gave them a lot of Torah and mitzvahs. The little boy said to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, I don't understand something. Mitzvahs are so hard. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu really wanted to do us a favor, he wouldn't have given us so many. Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu lezakos es Yisrael, lefichach hirba lehem Torah mitzvahs. If it really, there's so many of them, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu really wanted to give us a list, why so many everywhere you go, there's another mitzvah to do, you have to do this, and you have to do that by a certain time, and you got to just mind tefillah, shachris, everything, there's constant. So Shlomo Zalman, in his standard way, he smiled at the little boy, said, you're asking a very good question. Said to the little boy, let me ask you a question. When you get up in the morning, you put on your shoes, right? The boy said, yeah. Do you know anybody who doesn't wear shoes? He goes, no, there's my little brother Hershey who can't find his shoes sometimes in the morning, but usually, everybody wears shoes. Shlomo Zalman says, right, everybody wears shoes. You're going to put on shoes anyway. So you tie the right one, then you tie the left one, put on the right one, the left one, tie the left one, tie the right one. So you put on your shoes and you're doing a mitzvah. You're going to wear shoes anyway. Right. He says, do you know anybody who doesn't eat? He goes, no. Because you eat. So you eat kosher food. You're going to eat anyway. And because you eat kosher food, you're doing a mitzvah. So what does it cost you? It costs you a little bracha. So you make a shakol. How long does it take a shakol? What does it take? 3 seconds to make a bracha? 5 seconds to make a bracha? So you got a bench. How long does it take to bench? 3 seconds? 5 seconds? It's less than the first bracha, that's for sure. Ever notice mothers, by the way, are in charge of benching in the house. I know this is an interesting phenomenon. That's a mother's job. Did you bench? Bench, right? A mother's always asks, did you bench? Right? Chaim, did you bench? I didn't eat. Well, yesterday you ate, so bench. Just bench. Let's get another benching. And that's the mother's job. So, and by the way, if you want your kids to bench, just a piece of advice for the mothers in the room. If you want your kids to bench, just remember the kids do what you do. So how does a mother bench? Watch a mother benching something. That's how a mother benches. And usually she picks up the cell phone in the middle, and no delecha Hashem Elokeinu, let them know. So then she says to her kid, Tzvi, did you bench? I can't. Why not? I don't have a cell phone. How can I bench? So what you want to get the bench, or you want to get those? We have to show the right example. We're doing Torah and mitzvahs. We're doing these things anyway. And so we have an opportunity. There are mitzvahs lying around all over the place. There are mitzvahs to be picked up, crumbs of mitzvahs to be picked up everywhere we go. Somebody told me that the famous Hasidic Matzah, which I heard B'Shem Rabbi Eichenstein in Chicago, said like this. There was once, and somebody I think may have heard this at the Beis Yaakov girls again, I think I told this at the Beis Yaakov. There was a prince and a princess who were living in a palace. And they had a beautiful marriage. Beautiful marriage. There was only one problem. The princess was a slob. She never cleaned up the palace. Never cleaned up. That place was always in turmoil. The place was always a mess. And why they didn't have servants is a good question. I don't know, but it's only a story. And she never cleaned up the palace, and the prince was losing his patience. So one day he comes home and he says to her, "Listen, you're going to clean up or I'm going to throw you out of here." And she says, "No." She's lying on the couch reading a magazine. But the prince says to her, he walks into the other room and he comes out with a big cookie. He starts eating the cookie. He says to her, "Listen, I'm going to eat this cookie. If by the time I finish this cookie, you haven't started cleaning up, I'm throwing you out of here." So the princess, she's just lying there on the couch. She's reading away. He finishes the cookie. He says to her, "You going to clean up?" She goes, "No." He says, "Guards, out." And they unceremoniously dump her outside. The next day, he regrets what he's done, and he wants his princess back. He loves his princess. The problem is, there's a law in the land. Once you evict the princess, you can't take her back, just like Ahasuerus. So he doesn't know what to do. He calls in the first wise man. He says, "What should I do?" He says, "Sorry, no solution." Calls in the second wise man. He says, What should I do?" "Sorry, no solution." Calls in the Jewish wise man. Says to him, "Let me ask you a question. Was it a hard cookie or a soft cookie?" He says, "I mean, you want to know if there were raisins in it? I mean, what's the difference what kind of cookie it was?" He says, "Just answer my question." He says, "Well, it happened to be a hard cookie." He says, "Good. If it was a hard cookie, that means there are crumbs on the floor. If there are crumbs on the floor, you never fulfilled your condition, so you could take her back." So there are two important lessons here. Lesson number one, all wives should only bake hard cookies in the house. That's lesson number one. Lesson number two is that in life, there are crumbs lying around. They're called Torah and mitzvahs. They're lying there. All you got to do is bend down and pick them up. They're all over the place. Torah, they're all over the place for us. And they're available for us. And the irony of life is that when we're involved in that, there's more fulfillment. Those are the facts. When a person's involved in kina, taiva, and kavod, they end up frustrated, unfulfilled, and unhappy. It happens. It just happens. There was a case here in Los Angeles years ago. A wealthy couple, decided to commit a double suicide. So the husband got into his Trans Am, the wife got into her Lexus, they drove around the block and came at each other at 90 miles an hour. And they smashed head on at 90 miles an hour. Neither of them were killed because both airbags activated, so they couldn't even commit suicide. Couldn't even commit suicide. They were so unhappy, which a comedian once said, somebody tries to commit suicide, it doesn't work, why don't they keep trying? Now you got one more reason to want to commit suicide. You can't even commit suicide properly. You're so bad at everything, you can't even commit suicide properly. Buy a new car and commit suicide again. Okay, it's a good kasha. But at the end of the day, these are the rich and the beautiful, and they got the car, and why are you trying to kill yourselves? It's so empty, there's nothing there. And a person gets involved in Torah, Avodah, and Gemilus Chasadim, and it's so fulfilling, and it's so enriching, and a person has so much joy and contentment in his life. That's the only way to counter them. There's what time did we start, by the way? I don't want to go till Reb Shmuel. What time are we going till? Because we're off schedule a little bit. What's that? 9:25. 9:25. You think so, huh? Okay. So there's 9:25. The LA time. Remember, I'm on Israel time. There's a famous story of a man named Ravitzik from Krakow. Ravitzik from Krakow was a poor peddler living in Krakow, and one day he had a dream that there's a St. Petersburg, there's a bridge, and underneath this bridge there's a buried treasure. So he ignores it, what a dream, who knows what's behind a dream. The next night he has the same dream. In St. Petersburg there's a buried treasure under a bridge. The next day, a third day, he has the same dream. He says, listen, I got to go to St. Petersburg. His wife says, you're out of your mind. You haven't even got enough money to put food on the table. Now you're going to go spend money on a trip to St. Petersburg because of a silly dream. He says, no, I have to go. Takes the wagon, he goes off to St. Petersburg, and he's never been there in his life, and he knows the streets, he knows the route, he's exactly the way it appeared in his dream. And he goes driving, and sure enough, there's the bridge. There's a bridge there, right in St. Petersburg. That's the bridge that he saw in his dream, never been there before in his life. Problem is, a bunch of Soviet soldiers are parading, watching, security guys are around, and he can't just go start digging, he can't go digging under the bridge. So the first day he's there waiting for an opportunity, the opportunity never presents itself. The second day he's waiting, and again the opportunity never presents itself. The third day, one of the Soviet soldiers comes up and says, hey you, I see you've been hanging around here for 3 days, why are you loitering, what do you want? He figures the best way is the truth. He says, listen, I had a dream that there's a buried treasure under the bridge here in St. Petersburg. So the soldier starts laughing and laughing. He says to him, why, what's so funny? He says, because I've had a dream 3 nights in a row that there's a Jew named Rabitzik in Krakow who's got a buried treasure under his house. There's no kidding. Gets on his horse, rides back home, digs, and there's a treasure right under the front porch. So the Bali Muslims say, you know what the lesson is? We go looking around, we're looking around for treasures, it's right there, it's right under our front porch, we have it right here. And it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything, the cheapest thing in the world, to do a chesed. Pick up a siddur, learn a little Torah. It's right there, we have the treasure, we don't even know what we have. Rav Chaim Kreisworth, Zatzal was the chief rabbi of Antwerp. And Rav Chaim Kreisworth once went to, after the war, a Jew approached him. He said, look, my days are numbered. I have $870,000 in the bank. That was then, right after the war. He said, do me a favor. I have one living family member somewhere in the world. His name is Goldfarb, and I have a nephew, Feivel Goldfarb, who's somewhere, I don't know where he is. He's my only heir. Please, I want him to inherit the money. If you take the money, you'll be my trustee to get it to my nephew. Okay, the man dies a couple days later. Rav Kreisworth had this money, $870,000 in the bank. 25 years, he was looking around, whenever he had a chance, never came across the guy's nephew. One day he's sitting on a plane, and there's a Jew sitting next to him. He starts talking to the Jew, and the Jew starts lamenting his fortune. He said, I got no money, Parnassa is hard, and they start talking, and Rav Kreisworth says to him, they're talking, what's your name? Feivel. What's your last name? Goldfarb. Kreisworth says, Feivel Goldfarb? Did you happen to have an uncle? Did you have an uncle Shepsel Goldfarb? He says, yeah, that was my uncle. He says, I got news for you. Your Parnassa problems are over. Right? $870,000. Do you understand? The instant his uncle died, the money was his. The instant he died, because inheritance works in halacha, the instant he dies, the money becomes his. Oh, there's a watch. What a hint. That was so subtle. The instant, no, that one's fast. The instant the uncle dies in halacha, the inheritance kicks in. That means the man had the $870,000, he had it for 25 years, he didn't even know it. It was his for 25 years, he didn't know what he had. Every one of us has that. We've got it available to us. Sometimes we don't even realize what we've got. It's there, it's available. All we got to do is pick up the crumbs. Especially Erev Pesach. There's another idea here, and this is really the central idea what I want to get to. When it says that Akina ve'atayva ve'akavod motzina sa'adam min ha'olam, we said 2 ideas. We said it could take a person out of the world to come, and it takes a person out of this world because it could terminate his life. There's another idea. And the idea is that a person who's consumed with kina, taiva, and kavod is removed from the world of reality. He's living in the world of illusion. You're jealous of somebody because they got a nice car, and you think that they're every minute in their car, they're just, happy as a lark. And what you don't know is that the guy's still frustrated because he wanted the car that he got, which cost so much money. It was actually the wrong shade of brown, and he just can't live. He's just not as happy. You're jealous of somebody because they have a wonderful house, but you got to remember they have to live with the people in the house. You know, the house. You know, you see a beautiful house from the outside. What a gorgeous house! Yeah, wait till you meet the people. You know, there was a woman was sitting on a plane, and she looks over at the lady next to her, and the lady's got this giant diamond, giant, beautiful, sparkling diamond. The lady can't help, she's looking at the diamond. Eventually, she just says to her, I have to tell you, that's a beautiful diamond. She says, yes, but this is the famous Plotnik diamond. But it comes with a curse. I said, really? What's the curse? She said, Mr. Plotnik. So, sometimes you look at a person, wow, it looks, it just looks so good. It just looks like you're out of the world of reality. Kina, envy, takes us out of the world of reality. Taiva, you know what it's like, Erev Yom Kippur, after Yom Kippur, at the end of Yom Kippur, those grand plans of how much we're going to eat after Yom Kippur, right? And there's even an expression in English, I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse, right? You notice the expression is, I'm so hungry I could eat a little kosher chicken. Nobody says that. I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. No, you can't. No, you can't. You feel like you could, until you take 2 bites. After you take 2 bites, you're down to a pony. Right? And then it reduces quickly, step after step. You couldn't eat a horse. In the imagination stage, you think you could. And the same thing when it comes to kavod. When I have that job, when I get to that position, I'll have that kavod. Till you get there. Then what happens? Then you want the next position. Ehud Olmert, who used to be the Prime Minister of Israel, he was the mayor of Yerushalayim. He came to Sveikid Or Sameach about 2 months after he was elected mayor of Yerushalayim. I remember he came in to speak to the guys. He was a very good speaker, very entertaining. And there was a question and answer session afterwards. He had been mayor for 2 months, and it was an unexpected, he got in to become mayor, and guys were asking him questions. And he was really, you could tell he was still buzzed at the idea of being mayor. And he really was quite fond of himself. And he was standing there answering questions. And one of the guys, the final question of the night, a guy says to him, well, how come the country doesn't this with the Golan? Some security question. So he goes to the guy, I can't really answer that because I'm not the prime minister yet. And as soon as he said that, the coin dropped. They realized, you thought you'd want to be mayor. And as mayor, you're doing pretty well for yourself. But it doesn't stop there. You want to get to the next level. You always want to get, I thought that's the illusion of the kavod. Pesach, so we eat the matzah, we eat the chometz, and we eat the matzah. Chometz and the matzah, we don't eat the chometz. We get rid of the chometz, we eat the matzah. What's the difference between matzah and chometz? What's the difference between matzah and chometz? So I want to show you a piece of Gemara which I think everybody could relate to. It's one of the Gemaras that is most insightful in human nature. I've never met anybody who does not sense themselves in this piece of Gemara. The Gemara says, what is going to be the ultimate destiny of the evil inclination? What's going to happen to him? What's going to be the end of the Yetzer Hara? What the Gemara said? The Gemara says that he's going to be slaughtered. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Yetzer Hara is going to be shechted. And everybody is going to stand around. The tzaddikim are going to stand around and they're going to cry. They're going to say, how were we able to overcome this incredible mountain? And they're going to remember the pain. It's like when you think about what you went through when you were taking midterms in college or finals in college, just thinking back to it, even though you've graduated, you've long graduated, you think back to go, oh, did I way overstep? Whatever you invested, 3 days I was up, 3 days, and you think about it, a woman sometimes thinks about childbirth. And if you just thinking about it, could bring her to tears. I frankly don't think it's what it's cracked up to be. I think it's an attention-getting thing. But I said that to my wife once, by the way. I told her I think that this whole birth and this whole pregnancy, childbirth thing is an attention-getting thing. I said it once. Just thinking back on the pain and the difficulty could bring you to tears. The tzaddikim see a mountain, they say to themselves, how did we overcome this mountain of the Yetzer Hara? And when they think about the pain, what the investment to overcome, they start crying. The Rishayim, they take a look and they say, this thin strand of hair, this thin wisp of hair, how did we stumble on this strand of hair over and over and over? And they start crying when they think about how they stumbled, how weak they are that they couldn't overcome it. So the commentaries ask the obvious question. Okay, make up your mind. Is the evil inclination a mountain, or is the evil inclination a thin strand of hair? Which one is it? He's either a mountain or a hair. He can't be both. And the answer, which I'm sure you're way ahead of me, the answer is that there are two stages in every one of life's activities. There are two stages. Stage number one is the imagination stage. Stage number two is the experience stage. In the imagination stage in life, our experience shows us imagination always cracks things up to be much bigger and better than they actually are. When we experience things in life, especially good things, there's usually a letdown. It may be good and it may be enjoyable, but it's not what our imagination created it to be. So for example, if you've ever gone, people like traveling. Let's travel. And you travel. In the imagination stage, it's going to be great. We're going to be those traveling people, right? Till, never in the imagination stage you think about lost baggage. Never do you think about the fact that the hotel accommodations were quite what they were supposed to be. Never do you think about, people go camping. Let's go camping. We'll put on our boots. We'll be G.I. Joe, and we'll go camping. Well, let's go camping. We have the most activity I've done in 20 years is jumping into bed, and now let's go camping, right? But never in the imagination stage do you think about, never think about poison ivy. You don't imagine, that's fun. You never think about your tent getting blown away in the middle of the night. You never think about being chased around the tree by a grizzly bear. That we don't think about in the imagination stage. The imagination stage, we're going to be rugged and go through the mountains, right? Nobody ever thinks about, pulling muscles and that sort of thing. Because the imagination always cracks things up to be much bigger and better than it actually is. If you've ever been away from home for a long time, you go to yeshiva or seminary or whatever it is, you're away for 6 months or half a year, whatever it is, and you're going home to visit your relatives, right? You ever been away, or your relatives are coming to visit you, and you're on the plane, and you haven't seen your family for 8 months, 10 months, and the pilot announces, okay, put on your seatbelts, we're landing soon, and thump, 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 your heart is beating, because soon we're all going to be together, and we will be so happy, right? And we will sit around being happy, right? And then when you get into the car and your father still tells the same jokes, your mother is still nagging you, and by the time you get home, you're ready to turn right or back around and get back on a plane and come right back where you came from. For the first 5 minutes is excellent. And if you ever have relatives come to visit you for Yontif, it's great. Big hugs, right? Big hugs, right? Big hugs, right? And after about the first 2 hours, when did they say they're leaving? How 7 days they're going to be here? I'm well past my limit. That's because the imagination cracks it up to be much bigger than it actually is. What's a tzaddik? A tzaddik, I heard about a couple once. They spend months planning vacations. Months. They get brochures and they look up lodges and activities and travel accommodations, everything else. But they never go because they don't want to ruin it. So, because in the imagination, say there's the lodge and there are we, that sort of thing. But it never is. The tzaddik is somebody who's facing a temptation. The tzaddik faces a temptation. The tzaddik lives with that mountain of temptation. He does not give in, at least most of the time. He does not succumb to the temptation. And he walks away from it, never knowing that it was only a temptation. It was a mountain. He walked away from it. He thinks he's been deprived of a mountain of pleasure. The Rasha succumbs, and he walks away from it. He says, that strand of hair, I could not overcome that. That I couldn't overcome. So the difference between the tzaddik and the Rasha is all imagination. It's all an illusion. The difference between Chometz and Matzah, that means the Rasha lives with the illusion of Kina, Taiva, and Kollel. The Rasha gives into the illusion of Kina, Taiva, and Kollel. The tzaddik lives with the illusion, overcomes it, and when the Yetzer Hara is slaughtered in the future, he'll cry when he realizes the pain that he invested to overcome that mountain. What's the difference between matzah and chometz? Take a look at a piece of bread. Bread is this thick, matzah is flat. What would happen if you take the bread and you press it down, you press. What would it look like? It would be flat. It would look like matzah. That means what's the difference between, everybody knows Chometz is representative of the evil inclination. Chometz represents the Yetzer Hara. So essentially, what's the difference between them? Airspace. It's the only difference. It's all an illusion. The Chometz looks big, puffy. Push it down. It pats down very easily. Push it down. And when it pats down and it becomes the exact same thing as the matzah. That means the Chometz is an illusion. And when we remove the Chometz for those 7 days, which we mentioned is the 7 days represents the 7 decades of the average lifespan, what we're doing is we're trying to show that we are pushing away the Chometz, the illusion, for the course of our life. That's the only way to overcome it. The only way to take control, to be the one who's got the keys to the handcuffs, is if a person realizes life is an illusion. It's not there, it's an illusion. And if a person is able to overcome that illusion, he's got the fulfillment waiting for him of the kina, taiva, kavod opposites, which are Torah, avoda, and gemilas chasodim. Finally, it's a beautiful story that I heard in one of the concentration camps. One of the ghettos. There's a father and a son were in the ghetto. And things were closing in, things were looking really bad. And it was Pesach in the ghetto. It's Pesach in the ghetto. And at a certain point, the father and son, with whatever minimal provisions they could find, decided to make a Seder, whatever they had, smuggled in some flour. And just the two of them were sitting there at the Pesach Seder. So they started saying the Haggadah, and they got to the Manishtana. So the son said to the father, Dad, I want to ask the 4 questions, but actually I want to ask you 6 questions. There are 6 questions I'd like to ask you. The first are the first 4 questions of the Haggadah. I have 2 more questions. Next year, are you going to be alive to celebrate a Pesach Seder? Or next year, am I going to be alive to celebrate the Pesach Seder? So the father said to the son, I'll tell you the truth. I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know if we're going to be alive or not. One thing I do know, there will be Jews alive, and Jews will be celebrating the Seder next year as well. When we celebrate the Pesach Seder, what we're celebrating is the existence and the survival of Klal Yisrael. That Pesach Seder in our homes, every one of our homes, wherever we are for Pesach, we have to understand it's not just our own personal celebration. It's a celebration, the Pesach Seder, of all of Klal Yisrael. And so we should all have a Chag Kosher v'Sameach, and we should live and fulfill L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, that we should all have the Pesach Seder next year. Mitzvah Hashem, could be even this year. We should have the Pesach Seder in Yerushalayim. We should have an enjoyable Seder, a Chag Kosher v'Sameach. Thank you for listening.